Hey everybody, it's Paul here from Grain to Glass, and I'm happy to finally be back shooting more videos for you guys. Today we are looking at the new Kegmaster Series X Kegerator. These are brand new to the market, and a lot of people have been asking about them. I've never owned or used a Kegmaster Kegerator before, so I'm really curious to see how this sets up. So let's go ahead and unbox it. The nice thing with these kegerators is they're not too big, yet you can fit 4 ball lock kegs in here. So 4 19-liter ball lock kegs or 1 50-liter Sankey keg if you want to put in something commercial. It includes a tower cooler. Usually those are extra. Also included is a large drip tray. And a stainless steel guard. All right, so this should just snap into place on top. They also include a MK4 regulator. These are really nice quality regulators. We've sold them before at the shop. They give you 4 caster wheels if you want to put this on wheels to make it easy to move around. And then this clips onto the back of the unit, and you put your CO2 tank on here. This will fit a 5-pound CO2 tank, maybe a 10, I'll have to try, but a 5 for sure. So that'll go on the back side of the unit, so it'll keep your CO2 tank, out of visibility. So as I mentioned, this will fit up to 4 19-liter ball lock kegs, and the fridge is the same whether you buy the 2-tap version, the 3-tap version, or the 4-tap version. It's the same fridge. It's just going to be a different beer tower that's included. In with the beer tower, they're going to give you some beer and gas line with some duo-tight fittings, a tool for attaching your faucets and all that stuff. This is a dual tower that I'm using, so it comes with 2 stainless steel intertap faucets. Intertap faucets are fantastic, really good quality. And then, of course, the beer tower itself, which doesn't look like much right now. And some basic black tap handles. You can change these out for something fancier if you want to. Well, that's pretty much it. That's everything it comes with. So everything you need, aside from the empty kegs and the CO2 tank, is included in here. So we'll just quickly go ahead and get this assembled. We're going to go ahead and assemble the beer tower. The first thing you want to do, because I always forget, is you want to take this cover and put it on. If you forget to do that, you're going to install the shanks, and this will no longer fit over the top. You're going to have to take everything apart. So tip number 1, put this on first. Then we'll take our shanks and our duo-tight fittings here, and we'll get them attached. There's 2 sides to it. One is a little bit larger than the other. The small one goes onto this barb. Your beer line will go into the larger one. Then we're going to grab our beer tubing. They give you, again, gas tubing and beer tubing. The beer tubing will say 4 millimeter. The gas tubing will say 5 millimeter, so that's how you can tell them apart. Your beer line is already pre-cut. Let's see how much line they give you here. My guess would be about, give or take, 6 feet. We'll just get that installed onto the shank. So push it in. Okay, everything looks nice and tight. So I already went ahead and removed the lock nut here. So once you're sure everything's attached nice and tight, you're going to feed this through one of the holes here on your beer tower. Then grab your spacer here. You're going to see it's curved. You're going to want to put the curved side towards where the beer tower is going to be. Grab your lock nut. So hand tighten the nut as much as you can, then we'll grab our tool and then make sure it's really tight. Okay, that's all installed. nice and tight. We're just going to do the exact same thing with the other shank. Okay, so now we have both of our shanks installed. Everything's nice and tight. We can go ahead and attach the faucets now. We'll hand tighten it as much as you can, and then we're going to grab again our tool, and then we'll be able to make sure they're really tight. If you do not make these tight enough, as soon as you connect it to a pressurized beer keg, beer is going to start spraying out the sides. You definitely don't want that to happen, so make sure it is nice and tight. And then just the exact same thing on the other side. So there's a protective cover where the beer tower goes. Just take that off, grab your rubber seal here, and pass your beer line through that. Once that's done, just pass your beer line through the opening here. Once your line is passed through, you're just going to want to line up the beer tower holes with the holes that are pre-drilled into the kegerator, and they give you the screws to attach them. Okay, so to attach the beer tower to the fridge, you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. Don't tighten them all the way at first, that way if you have to line up the other holes, it'll make it a little easier. Now that they're all in, we'll just tighten them up really good. Now we can install the tap handles. So they just include some basic black plastic tap handles, but you could put whatever you want on there. We carry a variety of tap handles. Here's just one other example. It's like a pub style one. We also sell the insert on its own, so you could make a tap handle of your own piece of wood or really anything that you can think of. The other nice thing is most taps, they're either open, pouring beer, or closed. Intertap sells a spring that goes in between your faucet and the shank so that as soon as you let go, it'll snap it back closed. I actually do have one on hand, just a little spring, goes in between these two so it's compressed, and as soon as you let go of the handle, it'll snap back closed. Now that we have this all assembled and attached, we'll just run the beer tower cooler tubing up. It's really nice that they include this. So what this does, it's going to pull cold air from the fridge and pump it into your beer tower. Usually on like a cheaper beer tower that you buy, Walmart or Best Buy, it's not going to have anything like this. And what happens is your beer is nice and cold in the fridge, but everything in here is going to be room temperature. So every time you go to pour a beer, the warm beer in here, well, number one, the beer is going to be warm. Number two, because it's warm, it's going to foam like crazy. So having that tubing pumping cold air into here will keep the beer in the lines also cold, so you won't have that problem. So we have that tubing all the way up to the top. We'll put our cap on. And that's pretty much it. Depending on what type of kegs you put in here, whether it's Sankey, Pinlock, Ball Lock, they don't include the fittings because they don't know what type of keg you're going to put in there. So those you'll need to purchase separately. Most people are just going to be putting on Ball Lock kegs. So now we'll go to hooking up the gas side of things. So I'll just turn this around. So we can mount the CO2 cylinder tank holder here. Then your CO2 tank goes in here. This strap will keep it secure from getting bumped. For the CO2 regulator, all you have to do is install the knob. It just threads on just like that. They also include a duo-tight fitting for the CO2. So one part is threaded. That'll just screw on. You want to get some pliers or something and just make sure that this is really tight. If it's not, it's going to leak CO2. Now we'll take the 5mm tubing that they include and we'll install that. Again, making sure it's really tight. I can't find my 5-pound CO2 tank that I want to install on here, but I do have a spare 20-pounder that I'll just use just to show you guys how everything gets put together. So you can see on the regulator there's a gasket here. They also give you an extra one, so if you ever lose this or need to replace it, there's another one zip tied right there. The smaller tanks don't have this guard on it, so it makes it a little bit easier to install these. There we go. So again, hand tight it as much as you can. And you want to make sure this is really tight. If it's not tight enough, you'll have a small CO2 leak, and before you know it, your tank will be empty. Once that's done, the really nice thing with these Series X Kegerators, these are your CO2 line in. So they actually give you two, and that comes in handy if you wanted to, let's say, serve a stout on nitro or something like that. You can actually have a CO2 tank going into one, nitro tank going into the other. These are just regular PET beer bottle caps, or the same thing you'd find on like a Coke or Pepsi bottle. So if you ever lose one, they're easy to replace. So usually what you do is you take one of these off, just feed your CO2 tubing through it. But what I'm going to do, the carbonation caps that Kegland sells, that a lot of people will be using to do, let's say, pressure transfers on their Fermentosaurus or whatnot, these will screw onto here as well. So what this will allow me to do is install, my ball lock gas disconnect on here and clip it on. That way, if I want to take this CO2 tank, do a pressure transfer somewhere else, I don't have to unhook everything, I just click it off and away we go. So I'm just going to quickly eyeball roughly how much tubing I'm going to want. That should be plenty. So I'm going to cut that tubing, and I'll attach it onto a ball lock gas disconnect. Okay, so I have my ball lock gas disconnect here. Just going to grab my Oetiker clamp, put it over the tubing, and then use something to just expand that tubing, whether it's scissors, some needle nose pliers, some hot water, something like that. Just grab our crimper here. Make sure that's nice and tight. Perfect. Then usually if you weren't doing what I'm doing, you would have not installed this yet. You would have just passed the tubing through and then done this. I'll get the rest of my tubing installed here. Get that put on nice and tight. So yeah, that'll just easily allow me to connect and disconnect my CO2 tank. So now we'll get the gas line installed on the interior. They give you another duo-tight, like a T, so this will allow you to run 2 kegs off of one line. If you had the triple tap or quadruple tap, they would give you more of these. Make sure that's really tight. I'll just cut the rest of the tubing in half. Alright, that's nice and tight, and same thing for the other one. And that's pretty much it. So if you had ball lock kegs like me, you would just install 2 more ball locks on here with the Oetiker clamps that they include. And just some ball lock beverage on here if you're ball lock. Put pin lock if you have pin, or if this is going to a Sankey. And that's pretty much most of the installation here. I would just once again go over everything, make sure everything's nice and tight, double check all your duo-tight fittings, your clamps, make sure everything's good. And then before putting in kegs of beer or anything like that, I'd connect the CO2 tank with the regulator, bump it up to 20-30 psi, try to hear any leaks, and then I'd grab a spray bottle with some Star San or soapy water, something that'll bubble, and just spray everywhere. Look, make sure you don't see any bubbles. I do that on every connection, your gas disconnects, where the regulator screws onto the CO2 tank, all that stuff, because a lot of times people don't if it's their first time installing a kegerator, and they won't even know. They'll hook everything up, and then, you know, a day or two later their CO2 tank is empty. I have the fridge plugged in for the first time. So the reading that you see here is the current temperature inside the fridge. Right now it's in Celsius. If you push this button here, it'll show you in Fahrenheit. I'll put it back to Celsius. The fan button here is for the beer tower cooler fan, so you'll want that on. And then to change the temperature, just hold down on the cooler button for a few seconds. It starts to flash. Then you could push, you know, cooler or warmer. I'm going to set mine to 3 Celsius. That's kind of personal preference. That's what I like. If you wanted to cold crash some beer, you could put it even colder. I believe this unit goes down to -5, something like that, so that's plenty cold. And that's another reason why I like the Series X versus, let's say, a Danby Kegerator or something you build yourself, is you can't cool the temperature of the fridge down past whatever the manufacturer has it set to. So for instance, I have a Danby fridge that I converted that even at the coldest setting doesn't get colder than about 5 Celsius or so, which is fine. Your beer is still cold, but I personally would rather have it down to about 3. So that's what's nice about these units here. So that pretty much sums it up. Fairly easy to put together. You know, aside from what they give you, you'll need a Phillips screwdriver, some scissors, and just a crimper for those Oetker clamps. And that pretty much sums it up. So again, these are available in either 2, 3, or 4 tap configurations. Fridge is the same for all of them. It's just a beer tower that you get with the package that's going to change. And yeah, lots of room in there. You can fit 4 19-liter Ballock kegs or 1 50-liter Sankey keg. And that pretty much sums it up. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you know, hit us up in the comments. Hit us up on Instagram, Grain to Glass Homebrew, you know, Facebook. Call the shop. We're there to help you. Cheers, and thanks for watching.